what's changing our industry, why, offline is the new online, and how you really start building those local connections. Hello, everyone. We have got a good I always say they're good topics, but today's topic is truly one. You've heard me harp on it like 1,000,001 times if you've seen any of my content. It's one that I say at pretty much every speaking gig I give, and it's one that if you really take to heart can really be that holy grail of taking your practice from just marketing to, the commodity patient, that price shopper, to really attracting that upscale patient, that, well-heeled individual who gladly pays more. And so what we're going to be talking about today is what I am calling the Luxe Anti-Marketing Plan. And what do I mean by that? So when I say the anti-marketing plan, so many practices are stepping over dollars to get to dimes, right? You are throwing thousands and thousands of dollars a month at paid advertising and all these online things. And I'm not saying don't do that, but what I am saying is you're so focused on that you've lost sight of where affluent patients gather and how they do business, which is really by relationship and referral, right? So what we're going to be talking about today is what's changing our industry, why, offline is the new online, and how you really start building those local connections. So without further ado, let's get right into it, shall we? So we're going to cover a lot of ground today. Again, I kind of want to just start by really getting into the landscape of where we find ourselves in aesthetic medicine right now and how that's really shifted where we need to really be thinking about marketing and how we need to be approaching it. Really start there. Really then talk to you about local partnerships and how you begin to activate those, who you activate them with, and what those really look like. And then from there, we're going to talk a little bit about building a referral ecosystem, right? There is more than one kind of referral, and there's more than one way to get referrals. So we've got a lot of ground to cover. Grab your pen, grab your notepad. We are going to get into the nitty-gritty really quickly. So let's begin, shall we? I really want to start by just helping you understand why we see such a boom in local marketing right now and why it's where we see so many of our private clients really shifting their marketing towards and really seeing great results in doing so. It's because we are in the middle of what I am calling a competence famine. So what is that, right? So when we look at the competence famine, there's kind of two things that are happening at once. They're really kind of making a big storm of mess for all of you as established aesthetic providers, right? So the first is the competence famine, like I said, right? It's where we are surrounded with like AI slop all over the internet, right? Everyone and anyone can seem like they're an expert at, facial rejuvenation or, body transformation or all these different things because they've all got the same expert in their back pocket, Mr. Claude or Mrs. ChatGPT, right? So we are flooded with AI slop. At the same time, many of the best clinicians out there, they got shy. They went quiet. They stepped off camera. And who took their place? Well, frankly, people with no credentials and people that should never have had a microphone in the first place, right? So all these messy things are happening where it's not just like a patient trust recession. It's way worse than that. Like we are in the middle of a competence famine. So that's happening on one side of the equation. On the other side of the equation, and probably a big part of why you're here, is you have really, achieved something great in your business so far. But at the same time, with that, you've probably found yourself at what I call ceiling of clinical excellence, right? The ceiling of clinical excellence. This is where you have, done as much as you can do, trying to get referrals organically, but without a system, good work can only get you so far. And you, despite your best efforts, maybe you have tried online advertising and it really hasn't worked, right? Or it hasn't worked the way you want it to, or it's brought in the wrong kind of patients, but left at your own devices, you've kind of hit this ceiling. And usually this happens at around $2 million of revenue, give or take, where like you've gotten as far as you're going to get left to your own devices, and you need to find a different way of doing things. And that's exactly what we're going to show you how to do today. So when you take the competence famine and you pair it with the ceiling of clinical excellence, it's a bit of a mess, right? Which is, again, why we got to do things in a new and exciting way. So what does this look like, right? Again, just to give you a bit of an idea with this fun little graphic, the ceiling of clinical excellence and the competence famine specifically is where 5 forces converge, right? Like I said, it's AI slop, flooding your feed, flooding search engines, flooding everywhere you can get to online, right? It is algorithms on these social media channels that really don't like us, right? And they don't like the aesthetic medicine industry. And, upwards of 68% of plastic surgeons see that they are being shadow banned now, right? It's where we have people manufacturing credibility, right? Where, if you've got the right publicist and you've got, the right, influencer or two coming through your doors, you might be clinically quite inept, but, at the same time, someone can build a really great image for themselves that way. It's a mess, right? And then you pair that with, again, just, the fact that everyone's marketing looks and feels the same, and the patient has no idea who to trust with all this online smoke and mirrors and the rest of it. And so we need to do things in a way that is much more direct, in a way that's built on relationships, right? So we're moving away from the competence famine, and we're moving into an era where things are much more relationship-based, and it's all about interaction and ingenuity, right? So just to give you some stats on why this is so messy right now in our industry and what we're seeing, I don't know if you guys know this, but one of 3 practitioners that's calling themselves a plastic surgeon is not actually a plastic surgeon. They are not board certified by the ABPS, right? It's a mess. People are claiming all kinds of credentials they don't have. It's bad, right? Another thing you need to know about social media specifically is if we look at the traffic that's coming to your website and the traffic that's coming to your social media profiles, and frankly, all the activity that's happening online, as of right now, and by the end of the year it's going to be the majority, but as of right now, 51% of traffic online is actually bots. Like, it's not even real people, right? So that's a big part of why you're probably like, well, why are we getting all these weird fake leads? Well, a lot of the traffic online is just bots right now, right? And then third, we know, yes, AI has a place. I love AI. We use AI in our business, and our private clients use it in their practices every single day. But overuse of AI is a horrible, horrible thing. And probably even worse is using it in the wrong places at all. Right. So understand the affluent patient, yes, they are open to AI and they use AI in certain places and situations, but there are certain places where it should never be used. And one of these stats that kind of echoes this is 75% of consumers still prefer dealing with a human being, right? So keeping all this in mind, the problem is not any one of these things. AI on its own is not a bad thing, right? Social media on its own is not a bad thing, right? In fact, they're very good things. But when you combine all the ways all these things are being used, again, it brings us to that situation we've already talked about, which is the competence famine, right? Again, talking about this whole idea of the ceiling of clinical excellence, right? The ceiling is a very real thing, right? And again, you don't know what you don't know. And so what you've done has been great and it's gotten you to your current level of success. But we're going to need to share some new knowledge with you today, some new and fresh ways of doing things that are really going to get you to that next million, that $3, $4, $5 million threshold. So hope you're ready to learn because that's what we're going to get into. So just to give you a bit more context on the social media thing, and people think, oh, Adam hates online advertising. Adam hates social media. No, I don't. What I hate is over-relying on social media. What I hate is over-indexing on digital marketing because, again, we know organic reach, it's in the gutter right now, right? We know ad costs are soaring on all platforms, Meta, Facebook, you name it, right? Trust among patients of things online is at an all-time low just because, again, there is so much AI slop out there, right? And I think so many providers get caught in this trap of thinking like, oh, I have to go viral. And some of our clients have gone viral, and that's super exciting, right? But at the same time, understand going viral does not translate into patients, right? I want you to write that down. I'm going to say it again. Going viral does not translate into patients. Why? If you go viral, people in, a different country or the whole other side of the world might be seeing your content, right? They might be interested in aesthetic medicine. They might not be, right? Going viral, sure, it might attract some viable traffic, but a lot of it's just going to be people that have no interest in ever buying from you. So, going viral is a cool thing. And if you can have a video blow up, cool. But at the same time, like, it's not the be-all and end-all of social media success. It's actually quite the opposite. So keep that in mind. Now, let's walk through where our industry has gone, where we just emerged from, and where we're going. Because to understand the importance of doing things in a more relationship-focused way, in a more local-focused way, you really need to understand the evolutions that we've gone through in aesthetic medicine. Now, I don't know how long you've all been in this industry. I have been in aesthetic medicine since 2014. And so I emerged in this industry kind of at the end of the first era, in recent time, which is what we're going to call the discount era, right? This is really where like Groupon was in its heyday, right? This is where there wasn't near as much competition as there is today, not even close, right? This is where, there was still a little bit of a stigma associated with aesthetic medicine procedures, right? This is where our goal was like volume and getting people through the door at any cost, margins be damned, right? Get them in the door, volume is better, freeze them, fill them, zap them with a laser, send them on their merry way, next patient, right? That, again, was an era that we saw, in the early to mid 2010s, right? As social media was nowhere near as mature as it is today, right? Then around, 2015, 2016, that's when we really found ourselves in the midst of the exposure era, right? Where more was better, more followers, more social media content, more PR, more of everything, right? More SEO keywords, more, right? And that's all well and good, and there's nothing wrong with that era, but that era, as every era does, has hit its ceiling, right? And what we saw happen during the exposure era is, again, more was better, and people were doing all this stuff with agencies and PR firms, and the marketing spend was crazy and through the roof. But what happened, right? All of a sudden, we all have that same advantage now, right? Because when we look at, again, all the AI tools that have emerged, Claude, ChatGPT, things like, Nano Banana for image generation even, right? All of a sudden, things that would have taken a traditional marketing agency literally weeks to do, guess what? Claude can do that in literally a couple of hours, right? So being productive is like no longer your advantage. Being productive is no longer a way to get ahead. It's no longer a differentiator because everyone has the exact same cheat code now and it's AI, right? And that's why there's just so much slop out there because everyone can create so much so quickly. Quality, very variable, right? But productivity is no longer an advantage, right? The exposure era is kind of obsolete in 2026 and beyond, right? Then we've got where we're finding ourselves now, right? This could be looked at from two lenses. One is the ingenuity era, the era of interaction ingenuity, or what I really want to focus on today that comes with it is the fact that this means we're in a much more relationship-driven era, right? Where all of a sudden, trust is a differentiator, right? Relationships are the differentiator, right? Not seeing how much SEO optimized AI slop you can put there. Because by the way, all of a sudden, page one of Google, well, guess what? People aren't even browsing page one of Google anymore, right? We are in now an era of zero-click marketing where people ask, Google or ChatGPT or whatever tool they so choose a question, it gives them their AI-generated answer, and that's how they go on their merry way, right? So all of a sudden, all these things that were your online advantage, well, they've just in a nanosecond have pretty much evaporated, right? So understand we are very much now in 2026 and beyond really moving in to the relationship era. Very, very important to understand. So what do we see in the bigger world of business that we need to understand in your ecosystem, in your marketing as a MedSpa, right? Bain & Company, if you don't know who that is, they are a market research firm and a consulting firm that blue chip companies pay literally tens of billions of dollars a year to go and do all the deep dives into all of this, right? So we see there's really three things that if we look across sectors in the luxury market that Bain & Company have really seen as that defining characteristic of an advantage in this relationship era. The first is really having, again, like I said, high-touch relationships that really foster loyalty. Loyalty is also incredibly important in this era, right? Number two is people want experiences, right? They don't just want to feel like they're coming into your practice, inject, or zap, 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 and they're off to the next person like a conveyor belt. Like, nobody wants that anymore, right? People want really elevated experience where they feel like they're part of something. We're going to talk a lot about that today, right? And then third, all of a sudden, hyperlocal is the new viral, right? Again, not spending thousands of dollars on like Google adverts and all this stuff that may or may not convert for you and is probably quite costly, but like going and making relationships with businesses like 5 doors down that actually have access to the clientele you want but don't compete with you. So these are things across sectors that we see being more important than ever in the area of relationships, in the era of ingenuity interaction. Super, super important. So let's look a little bit further about what your advantage is going to be, right? What are we going to do when algorithms fail? What are we going to do when all of a sudden, we don't know what to do with this online marketing stuff, right? It actually presents, as everything does, a bit of a silver lining, right? All of a sudden, when you build a local relationship, whether it's with a high-end real estate broker, whether it's with a Pilates studio, we're going to talk about in a few minutes, like the businesses you should partner with, but understand, like, all of a sudden, you're immune to noise, right? You have, like, a whole direct path that you never had before and that no online channel can give you to the affluent, right? They don't look at your follower count if they were referred to you by, someone they trust, right? They just go on and book. They have a recommendation, right? All of a sudden, you get to leverage not only your own prestige, but also the prestige of those people that are in your referral network, right? Being affiliated with that individual and vice versa, right? Every relationship is, mutually beneficial. Comes with some prestige already built in, right? It's a great thing, right? Perfect example of that, a wealth manager, right? If they are dealing with, the top 1% of the 1% or whoever they happen to be, and they refer you or mention you or, you guys have some kind of partnership, well, guess what? That prestige is already there, right? Because they know that professional doesn't just wheel and deal with any old random person off the street. They have a certain standard, and that automatically just makes it a much warmer introduction, right? And then last but not least, right, when we look at the long-term investment in a relationship-based marketing approach, it's way more cost-effective, right? And over time, the ROI compounds. Yes, as with any marketing initiative, building relationships comes with some investment at the beginning, but unlike a paid ad where like that may or may not turn into a lead or may or may not flourish, over time, the ROI really compounds. And when you get very good at building relationships and doing things locally, it compounds really quickly, right? So it is so high ROI, which is why I absolutely love it. And best of all, we don't worry about an algorithm changing. We don't worry about a new ad rule where you can't advertise a certain service. Like, none of that applies in the world of relationship-based marketing, because these are things that endure for years and decades if you do them the right way. So many advantages in this silver lining of the confidence famine, right? So what does this look like, right? Again, like I said, we're going to talk about local partnerships and how you build a referral ecosystem, because that is truly the way forward in the ingenuity and interaction era, in the relationship era. Not saying don't do social media, not saying don't do digital marketing, but what I am saying, where I see those things really factoring in this era, those are an amplifier of what else you're doing, which needs to be relationship focused. Very, very important to understand. So let's get into the nitty gritty of how you actually do it, right? A term I want you all to write down, a term that's going to define so much of what we talk about today, is COI. COI. What is COI? COI is an acronym, and it's an acronym that stands for Center of Influence. Center of Influence. What is a center of influence? Well, very simply, a center of influence is someone who has access to the patients you want, but doesn't compete with you, right? It also is great because when you find the right centers of influence, these aren't patients coming in for a one-time ad for toxin or a one-time ad for an energy device or anything like that. These are introductions that want multiple things, that want to come back, that are going to stay with you. They have high LTV, right? And it's little to no client acquisition costs, especially compared to, some of these, higher, ticket items you're doing for marketing, like Google AdWords or hiring a publicist or all these different things that are very costly. There is an investment, sure, at the outset to build that relationship, but when they're continually sending patients to you, your client acquisition cost is going to be zero or near zero, right? And again, like I talked about a minute ago, it really comes with that transfer of trust, right? Super, super important, because all of a sudden, that's not something you have to sell and tell and convince and explain why you're the best compared to like Botox by Becky down the street, right? All of a sudden, like, they're that much more eager to talk to you. They're that much more ready to book a procedure. And it's just such a different conversation than some random stranger who comes in off an online ad, right? So this is why I love centers of influence. And again, if I were to describe them really succinctly, they're basically someone who has the Rolodex of patients you want, but doesn't compete with you, right? They have access to the patients you want, but don't compete with you. So keep that in mind. So what do you need to do first, right? Here's why most practices, like, it completely flops when they try and build a network of centers of influence. Like, they literally walk up into these businesses, start throwing business cards at people, and they're like, oh, well, Adam, we tried that and it didn't work. First of all, that's the wrong approach. We're going to talk about that in a few minutes. Second of all, you didn't have a suite of collateral. You didn't have a toolkit ready, right? And how you're going to approach each partner is different. It's going to be different for every single practice, but just a few things you want to keep in mind as you build your, let's call it your toolbox of outreach tools, your repertoire of collateral that you're going to use to build these relationships. Few things you want to include. The first is create a little PDF talking about your practice, some of your most popular treatments. Maybe you show some of your really compelling before and afters, the benefits of a mutual relationship, right? And by the way, again, keyword here, relationship, right? This is not just where you expect these people to like give you business and not do anything back for them. It needs to be a two-way road. It needs to be a two-way relationship. Every successful business partnership is, right? But creating a short deck about your practice and about how you partner, that can be beneficial, right? Having VIP access cards, right? And these should not be wet and print at like the UPS store, right? Or like FedEx. Like, these need to be really high quality card stock that these businesses can give to either their staff or to their clientele, depending on the business and how you're partnering with them, right? But that's really, really important. If you want to be a little bit more sophisticated with your digital marketing and leveraging technology to build these relationships, have a landing page created specifically that your referral partners can send their clientele to, right? And that way it just facilitates things more online. Maybe people can sign up automatically, get into your database, or book a consultation directly from your partner's landing page. Again, that can take any number of forms, but ideally, if you want to be a little bit more sophisticated, you have a partner-specific landing page as well. And then last but not least, one thing that's really, really key when you approach any new potential partner is building a relationship from a place of value, being a giver first, right? So what is that experience that you can give to that center of influence, whether it's the owner of the business, whether it's their key team members, whatever it happens to be, that is very low to minimal to like no out-of-pocket cost for you, but like let someone experience your practice and see the benefits. Dermaplaning can work great for this, right? Maybe an express hydrofacial can work really great for this. Maybe, some other kind of facial with your esthetician. Things like an LED mask, those things can work really, really well. But what is, chemical peels, right? Minimal to no out-of-pocket cost for you, but really high perceived value for that, person on staff at the partner business where they can experience your practice. Another one, if you do like a skin analysis tool of some sort, that can work beautifully here too. So make sure before you start going out and just throwing business cards to people, you have some kind of a partnership deck created. You have VIP access cards. If you want to be more sophisticated, I would also encourage you to do a landing page. And then last but not least, also really decide what that, giver first mindset is going to look like and what the experience associated with that complimentary introduction to your practice for a potential partner is going to be. Once you have all four of these in order, then we can go out and we can start making some friendships, right? So just make sure you have this dialed in before you go out and do anything else. So every COI relationship really follows the same framework and 5 key steps, right? The first is we need to figure out who we're going to actually target, right? We need to identify who our COIs are going to be. The plumber in the wealthy neighborhood might not be the greatest COI. They probably are a natural referral, right? The functional medicine doctor who doesn't do aesthetics, or the Pilates studio, right? Or maybe it's a really high-end bridal boutique near your practice. Those are great COIs. So you have to identify them, and you have to identify the right centers of influence, right? From there, we need to approach them. And again, we always approach from a place of value, and we always approach by being a giver first. So we make sure we do that. Once we've built that value and we've established some rapport, then we go into really looking at what that partnership can look like and really begin to get into the nitty gritty, right? That's step 3, meet of the minds, you and this new partner, and decide what your collaboration is going to look like. Then we actually do it, right? The activation of whatever we choose to do. Maybe it's an event, maybe it's some kind of a more, staff-oriented initiative, but whatever it happens to be, we actually activate it, right? And then as it grows and we learn what works and where we can tweak things a little bit, over time it will evolve, it will grow, and it then becomes something of a naturally growing and flourishing and organic ecosystem, right? So we identify them, we approach them with value. Then once we've built that value, we can start to talk about what a relationship might look like. Then we actually put the partnership into place. And then from there, we tweak, adjust, and it grows and flourishes on its own. It's the greatest thing ever. Once you get to step 5, oh my gosh, you will be seeing how powerful this can be. So just keep these 5 steps in mind. Most practices literally try and start at step 3, and they're like, yeah, it didn't work. I'm like, well, yeah, because you skipped the first 2 steps, right? So just keep that in mind. Now, let's talk about what COIs I like to target specifically. And one size never fits all, but generally there are categories of businesses that I do quite well with, and we see our clients do very well with. One is obviously fitness studios, right? People that are going to a fitness studio, naturally, they, to some extent, right, care about their appearance and feeling their best. It is such a natural partnership, right? So what could this look like, right? Maybe you offer some kind of, post-class glow, right, where people can come in for, a hydration IV if you do that at your practice or something like that after their fitness class with a special voucher or a VIP access card and can enjoy preferred pricing or a complimentary enhancement, right? So many things you can do there. It could also include a skin consultation, right? But what is that going to look like for you? You can structure different ways, but some kind of post-class incentive for members of that studio, right? I love a good instructor VIP day where you pick a day where you do, kind of let's call them, taster treatments or those complimentary experiences for the staff of that fitness studio so they can then become your advocates and, your natural born salespeople, right? Really, really important. I find fitness instructors, they're kind of like micro-influencers in their own right? They have influence over the people that are seeing them several times a week, right? Sweating it out and doing all the things. That's naturally something they're going to build a friendship and, relationship with. So why not have those instructors be your micro-influencers, right? And again, there could be, exclusive perks for members of these fitness businesses, right? It could even be where maybe you sponsor a class, right? You buy out the spots of that Pilates studio, $40-$50 a piece, you spend the $500, whatever, right? Then the members of that studio can attend compliments of your practice. And because you sponsored the class, you get to chit-chat with them before class, after class, give them a voucher, all the things. So there's numerous ways you can partner with fitness businesses, but they are probably my favorite and most surefire, trusty COI. Love me a good fitness studio. Second is I love a good real estate broker, right? Whether it is the agent at an individual level or it's a brokerage that you build a partnership with. Why do I love real estate people, right? If you're in the real estate business, maybe you know some real estate professionals yourself, right? They are kind of like the mayor. They know everyone. Their whole job is kind of contingent on meeting and connecting people because that's how they grow their own book of business, right? So we've done some really cool things with real estate brokerages before or real estate agents on an individual level. We've done both. But what I like really, really well is go ahead and look at how you can gift them something they can give to their clients when they close on a new $1 million plus property, right? It could be, your gorgeous new neighbor or your new home for longevity or whatever you want to call it, right? Something they can put in that gift basket they give to their, new person in the area. Ideally, again, on like $1 million plus property because, we want a certain caliber of patient. We just do, right? It's just the nature of what it is. So, right, I like a $200 gift voucher they can use towards their first treatment. I've seen that work really, really well. And you can obviously put caveats in there like a minimum spend and things like that. All kinds of great things you can do. So I love my real estate professionals. I think they're some of those well-connected people in your market. And definitely people you want to get in your good book. So keep that in mind. Another one on the longevity side, I love a good lunch and learn for the staff of that brokerage, talking not only about your practice, but just educating them about the latest in, wellness and regenerative health and skin health and all these wonderful things that you are doing at your practice. So tons of opportunities both on the agent level and the brokerage level to really build some partnerships with these folks who, again, have Rolodex full of affluent prospective patients for you, right? They work beautifully. Another one, weddings. Oh my goodness, do I ever love a good wedding professional, right? This could be a makeup artist who is really well versed in the wedding space. This could be a wedding planner. It could be the owner or staff at a wedding boutique. Maybe you know someone who owns a wedding venue. All of these, a florist, all of these are perfectly good professionals to partner with. Anyone who has anything to do with weddings works beautifully. Why do I love wedding professionals? I want you all to write this down. Brides are buyers, right? Brides are buyers. Are they ever buyers, right? Someone wants to look and feel their best walking down the aisle, bride and groom alike, right? And if they've already spent, $30, $40, $50, $60, $70,000 on a wedding, maybe more in some cities, right? Like, what is another $5,000, $6,000 to feel their most confident walking down the aisle, right? So how do I like to partner with bridal businesses? This can take many different forms, right? I love having our clients develop wedding-ready timelines, right? 6 months before the big day, 30 days before the big day, 12 months before the big day, or depending on what timeline someone has to work with, you can do a different series of modalities and wellness treatments to help them look and feel their most confident on the big day, right? So I absolutely love that. And don't neglect the mother of the bride. She wants to look and feel her best on the big day too, as does the father of the groom and father of the bride, right? Everyone does, right? But don't just stop at the wedding party themselves, expand beyond that, right? If you have a really strong base of esthetician services in your practice, you might also want to look at doing bridal parties, right? These can work incredibly well. So also see, maybe you do things like a hydrofacial bridal party or things like that, but plenty of opportunities to collaborate with wedding professionals. They're one of my absolute favorites. So keep them in mind. Let's keep it moving right along, right? We've also got, obviously, our hair salons, right? These are people that naturally are in the beauty business. And, depending on what, how fancy someone is with their hair, they're seeing these, professionals every couple of weeks, right? So I love a good partnership with a beauty professional. This could be some kind of more structured referral partnership where there's, perks and incentives for the stylist on their esthetician treatments. It could be somewhere maybe there's like a mirror cling on their mirror. It says like, great hair deserves fabulous skin or something like that. Like you can play with this from so many different angles, but I love partnering with hair salons and nail salons and lash artists and all those different beauty professionals. Great opportunity. One I think a lot of people overlook, and they're a little bit hard to permeate, but they can be very powerful when you do it the right way, is actually private schools. Now, let me explain why, because a lot of people don't understand like what we're trying to do here. So this can take different forms. One of my favorites is if you can find a private school with, students between the ages of, let's say, 12 to 17, why not go in and do a teen acne talk, right? We are not trying to sell anything. That is extremely important to understand here. We are not trying to sell these people treatments. All we are doing for students and parents is educate about acne, what causes it, things that can be done to mitigate and prevent it and handle it, right? Our goal is to be strictly educational. And why are we doing this? Our goal is not to get those teenagers as patients at all. That is not what we are going for. But their parents, oh my gosh, that is definitely who we're going for, right? So you give them then a take-home piece, right, where they can learn all about what you talked about the day for acne, or, changes that happen in the teenage years. We've done, some talks here on that too about, the importance of sleep and nutrition and, being physically active and all those great things, as you're, going through the changes that come with the teenage years. We've done things like that too. But that take-home piece, it educates about, in summary, everything you discussed. And on top of that, then educates a little bit at a very, very high level what your practice does. It has like a QR code where they can learn more, or come in and get like a complimentary SPF or something like that. That can be super powerful, right? And again, we're not trying to get these students as patients, but their parents, we most certainly are, right? Even sponsoring certain things can work well. Maybe you sponsor a sports team in the right circumstances, right? Private schools are a good one if you can get permeated into that network, and if you know someone who's, on member staff there, or their kids go there. One of our clients has kids that went to actually a private school, and we permeated the living daylights out of that network. And actually, we got them some celebrity 30 patients at that connection. It was phenomenal. So I love a good private school partnership. They're just a little bit nuanced, but they can be very, very effective. Perfect. And then I said also, your financial and legal advisors, these are people the affluent in your market naturally trust, right? How do we educate them? How do we add value to them? Again, this is going to look different for every single one of these professionals, and depending on what your practice offers, just some ideas here for you, but there are a ton of opportunities here. Again, we permeate their networks. These are very high trust relationships. So when you can do that, you have an automatic in, right? It's super, super powerful. Again, always be a giver first. I cannot emphasize that enough, right? The analogy I like to use is like if you were on a date, right, and you were on a first date and you like threw a wedding ring on the table, like, that diamond ring on the table before you even ordered your appetizers, like, oh my goodness, do you think that date would stick around? Or would they run out the door screaming, being like, this person's a loon, right? But that is exactly how most of you are trying to go about doing your COI partnerships, right? You don't try to build value. You don't try to build a relationship. You just run in, let's collab. And like, they don't even know who you are, why you're any good, if you're worth what you're saying you are. Like, they don't know any of that, right? So you have to be a giver first. Always look to add value, and there's numerous different ways you can do that, right? Let's talk about some objections you might come across as you build your partnerships, right? A lot of businesses, especially if these are people that are maybe more independent businesses or have a really close relationship with their clientele, might be like, well, I don't want to feel like I'm selling other stuff to my clientele, right? They trust me. Again, that's not what this is about. Because you've given value first, you are helping them really discover a vetted resource that their clientele are probably looking for anyways, and have probably been burned by other med spas in the past and want to know who's legit, right? So always, this is why when we come at it with value first, we can naturally overcome that objection versus being like, let's collab, right? And there's no value built where people have that guard up. So that's the first thing. If people feel like they're selling because you've added value first, you can let people know this is not about selling to people. It's just about helping them really get an introduction to a vetted resource, aka your practice, they're already looking for, right? Second to that, this is often one we see with like the wealth managers and the legal professionals and people that just by the nature of their profession do their due diligence, are very cautious, right? Totally get that, right? That's why you be a giver first so people can see what you're all about and know they're not referring someone to like a hole in the wall or like some totally uncredentialed provider, right? So I love making sure that when we're a giver first, we can overcome that objection of like, well, what if they have a bad experience, right? So keep that in mind. Or you might run into centers of influence or potential centers of influence that already have a practice they're going to, right? We're not trying to jeopardize or compromise those relationships. All we're looking to do is add to them, right? Maybe there's something that you do that the med spa they go to right now doesn't, or something that you offer that the practice they are, aligned with right now does not, right? We're not here to break any relationships. We're just here to add new ones in ways that we can uniquely complement and really add something different to the picture, right? So these are 3 objections that you are probably going to run into as you're building these partnerships. And again, being a giver first helps dissipate basically all of them, right? So keep this in mind. So what does our rollout plan for building centers of influence look like, right? I always say, as with all things in marketing, nothing worth doing happens overnight, right? I know there's people that are promising like 30 patients in 30 days. They're selling you a bill of goods, okay? Anything that's going to endure in marketing and that's going to actually bring you a halfway decent patient is going to take a little bit of time. In my vantage point and in my experience, usually building really strong centers of influence, that takes between 60 to 90 days. So just some examples here of what a 60-day rollout could look like, right? You start with your foundation and finding who your targets are going to be, right? Then you go about and really begin to approach them. Again, always being a giver first, right? From there, then we actually really build out the experience and what it's going to look like to build out that COI activation, right? And then last but not least, we do the activation itself. And that's something that endures from day 60 to 90 into months ahead and even years ahead, right? And when you get really, really good at these partnerships, there's going to be things you do on a bi-monthly basis or even a monthly basis, right? We have numerous clients who the fitness studios they're partnered with, like we're doing activations every 60 days or every quarter in some cases, right? But it's something we do not just once and then hope it endures forever, but we're always keeping things going. Really important to understand that. It's never a one and done. Again, nothing worth doing in marketing is, right? So always just measure a few different things to understand how well you're doing with your local partnerships. You want to measure how many active partners you have. And by the way, like 5 or 6 really good centers of influence, that is way more valuable to me than like 12 that kind of suck, right? So quality over quantity, as with all things in marketing done properly, but especially with the number of partners you have, right? Look at how many referrals you're getting from each referral source. And if someone isn't sending you a bunch of referrals, it doesn't mean they're a bad COI. It just means maybe somewhere along the way, we didn't send them up for success, right? Maybe their staff didn't have talk tracks. Maybe it was a situation where they just didn't know how or when to best refer, and we need to do a little bit of training, right? always look at the number of referrals you're getting, not as who's good or bad, but just in where maybe there's an opportunity to set someone up for success. Now, if you go a year and one center of influence sends you like no referrals, okay, then maybe we cut that loose. But you get what I'm saying. So often a referral source that's not sending you a lot of patients isn't to me a red flag. It's a flag that you need to do a better job of educating them and setting them up for success. So keep that in mind. Look at what the leads they're sending you are spending at your practice. Are they just coming in for a couple units of tox? Or are they doing like a full rejuvenation protocol with filler and skin boosters and lasers and all the good things, right? And then, of course, look at the lifetime value over a year of those patients as well. So just some metrics here you can really look at to make sure that your COIs are working well for you and that you've set your COIs up for success. Very important to keep that in mind. So switching gears a little bit, if that's referrals from other businesses, which truly are the holy grail, what do referrals from your patients look like? Now, I will just start with a caveat here. Every single market in the world, even in certain countries, even from region to region, there are, often, stipulations around what you can do as far as a referral program goes, how you can or can't structure them. So I want to give you a repertoire of ideas right now, but understand you're going to want to run this by your legal and regulatory bodies just to make sure that it is in compliance with what you can and can't do in your market, and that varies from one place to the next dramatically. So just be inspired by these ideas and then see how you can adapt them in a way that's going to be compliant for your practice. So that out of the way, let's get into it, right? Like I said, we just talked at length about B2B referrals, and that's great. But let's talk about C2C referrals, right? Client to client referrals, right? Consumer to consumer referrals, right? How do we turn your happy patients into like 10 happy patients, right? And it's not just a matter of like, oh, well, right, for us, the patient will give you money off. Like that can be part of it if you so choose, but there is way more to it than that. So what does this look like, right? There's your everyday referrals. Those are those referrals that are happening organically. That's probably, for most of you watching this, what's gotten you to like your ceiling of clinical excellence right now that you haven't been able to shatter, right? So that's one thing, right? Those everyday referrals that are kind of just happening by happenstance and organically. We love them, but we want to amplify them. We'll talk about that in a minute. And there are social media referrals, right? If someone posts a selfie in your practice while they're there and tags you, how are you incentivizing them? Give them, again, a complimentary enhancement on their next facial, or give them a $15 voucher towards their retail purchase that day, right? But incentivizing people to create social media content is a very powerful passive referral stream, right? You grow your followers out of it. You inevitably get referrals out of it. It's great, right? And then certain times of the year that maybe things are a little slower, right? Or where things are really busy, right? And we want to play on that. Maybe we lean into seasonal drives. We're going to talk about that in a moment as well. I love a good dual booking incentive. Mother, daughter, husband, wife, two besties. There's so many different ways we can play with this, but if someone brings a friend in with them, caveat, the friend is not a patient of the practice already, right? There should be some kind of incentive tied to that, right? And that probably happens already organically, and it's kind of annoying because you didn't schedule for it. So like, why not plan that in a way that's going to incentivize the patient and also let you schedule properly for it, right? When people think about events, they think about these big, like flashy 100-person things, and those have a place. But one of my favorite things to do is a referral soiree. If you've got patients that are teachers or like nurses in a hospital setting who have no aesthetic medicine interest or whatever, right? Those people are generally like, they kind of are like little armies, right? Like they are so well connected. I love doing referral soirees where, your patient brings in some of their friends and there's a whole, set of incentives and goodies associated with that, both for the hostess and for those who show up, right? That can work well too. Think like Tupperware parties from back in the day. Like I love a referral soiree, right? And then last but not least, I love your top referral sources. Those people that are sending you 5, 10 or more patients a year, like really roll out the red carpet for these folks. Treat them like gold, right? They are truly your VVVIPs, right? So let's talk about this referral ecosystem because you want to make sure you're leveraging all 6 to the best of your ability. Again, just depending on what you can and can't do in your market, right? So again, everyday referrals, right? Do you have referral cards? If not, you should be creating some, right? Very, very powerful, right? Do you do anything after a treatment? Not just like the clinical follow-up, like obviously you're doing that, but what do you do within like the 2 weeks or so following a treatment that encourages people to talk about your practice with their friends and share their experience and do all of those things, right? And often for a lot of people, coming for a consultation alone can be really daunting, especially if they're new to aesthetic medicine, right? So why not allow patients to bring a friend in with them for a consultation, just, and give them, a little skin analysis complimentary or something like that, right? It reduces booking friction, not just from like that whole, getting into the practice kind of thing, but also that like psychological barrier that a lot of patients have where they're scared to talk about their biggest insecurities that they probably told their best friend about 1,000,001 times, so why not get them in together? And the friend is just there as moral support, right? But more often than not, they end up turning into a patient as well, right? So these are some great ways you can really amplify and maximize your day-to-day, everyday referrals. As far as social referrals go, again, maybe something you do at check-in, right? I love finding Instagrammable moments in your practice that are things people want to take a picture with, right? Really cool mirrors can do this, or really cool features in your powder room can do this, right? It's going to look different for all of you, but I love a good Instagrammable moment or a selfie station. I just kindly ask you, don't let it be like the moss wall with neon letters. That is so 2017. That's so played out. You need to do a little better than that, right? I also love, certain times of the year doing a tag to win giveaway. Now, I will say a lot of practices do this wrong and give away treatments. I don't like that at all. I like it to usually be for skincare products, or if you want to be a little more generous, a gift voucher, but we never give away a treatment itself. I think that devalues your flagship offerings and what is actually your revenue drivers, which are your injectables, your esthetician services, your energy devices, all of that, right? So as far as social referrals go, Instagrammable moments, leveraging giveaways done in the right way for skincare or gift voucher, and things that you might choose to do at check-in as well. So just keep that in mind. Seasonal drives, again, this is going to look different for every single one of you depending on what your traffic patterns look like over the course of a year. But I love this around the holiday season. I love it during the spring. But things that, really encourage people to refer during these key windows. Summer is also a really great one. I'll often do a very generous referral incentive campaign during summer because we know that it's typically slower. So we just want to, crank our efforts up a notch. So just keep that in mind. Duo booking, like I said, this works phenomenally for Mother's Day. It works phenomenally around Mother's Day and Valentine's Day and the holidays. You can position this any number of different ways, but again, it's never about discounting and devaluing your services, never, ever, ever, ever. It is always about preferred pricing and added value. Very important distinction, but I love a good duo booking offer. Referral soirees, again, like I said earlier, think of them like that Tupperware party from back in the day, right? Where your patient is doing most of the work for you. All you really have to do after hours, this could be from maybe say you close at 5, so you do it from 5:30 to 7:30 or 6 until 8. You do a little bit of light catering and you show up. That's basically the gist of it. Now, you'll want to create materials for your patients to share with their friends and invites and things like that, but the mechanics itself are very, very straightforward, right? You may choose to do a presentation. You may not choose to do a presentation. As far as the offer you make at these referral soirees, they can be different too, right? Some people will do an offer where it's an evening of offer if they book a consultation that evening, or it's where if they book a treatment that evening. I think it's a little bit more how do I say this? A little bit more proactive, dare I say even a bit aggressive. I don't love where they have to commit to the treatment that evening, but if they book a consultation that evening and treatment within a certain window, like 30 days, then it's valid, right? If you want to be a little softer with it, maybe you give them a gift voucher they can redeem within 14 to 30 days of the soiree, right? So one size never fits all for your evening of offers, but you want there to be some type of evening of offer, whether it's for a treatment, whether it's contingent on them booking a consult, or whether it's a voucher they can use for 30 days or 14 days following the event. You decide, but you always want there to be some kind of evening of offer. Very important. Then, again, as for your ultra, mega, super duper spectacular VIPs, those people that are referring you more than anyone else's, roll out the red carpet. If you have a membership, one thing I like to do is maybe you create a level of your membership where you can't even buy your way into that, right? The only way you can become a member at that level is by referring you a certain number of patients. If you have merchandise that's branded to your practice, oh my gosh, that works phenomenally, right? All you want to do there is create some really cool swag that, again, people can't even buy, right? It could be a really cool hoodie. It could be a really cool handbag, right? Something that is going to be a bit of an investment for you, but if someone's sent you 10 patients over a year or 5 patients over the course of 6 months and you know the lifetime value of those patients, give them a couple $100 of swag. Why wouldn't you, right? It's well worth that investment. But referral-only swag is great to do as well. And then also a VIP-only event. I like this being a dinner, usually in the fall towards the early winter months, right? Where you are just treating them somewhere away from your practice, right? It's splashy, it's fabulous. We're not trying to sell them anything. It's just to say, we appreciate you. And you can do this both for your patient referral sources and for your top referring centers of influence, by the way, right? And make it something really exclusive, maybe 10 people or less that people look forward to all year long. And it's why they want to be encouraged to refer people. So that can work beautifully too. So many ways you can play into this. So what does this look like over time, right? Again, don't try and do everything all at once. It will all end up being done half measure that way. Do less better, but really look at it in, an annual kind of process. One step builds on the next. always start with building your foundation. Then from there, we do those things to amplify it. And then finally, we add that little exclusivity element as the cherry on top, right? Like I said, building a good referral ecosystem does not happen overnight. It takes about 12 months, but these are the ways you can really look to do it. Again, it'll look a little different for all of you, but just some best practices to really keep in mind. Now, again, understand there's your honky-tonky, like everyday referral, right? And that's what I see most practices do, and there's no value there. And then there are luxury standards for referrals, right? Where it's all about sharing the secret and tapping into exclusivity. And again, really leaning into that element of relationship building versus like, well, I want my $50, like here's a referral card, right? So there's nothing luxurious or elevated about that. It's all about how we position it and how we phrase it. So really want you to keep that in mind. Again, just some examples here of what a referral ecosystem can really look like in action for you. So definitely some great gems of wisdom in building your foundation, amplifying it, and then adding the exclusivity, like I said, as that cherry on top. So that was a lot very, very quickly. Let's talk about what you can do as far as an action plan goes, right? Because again, like I said, nothing worth doing happens overnight, and you always want to do less better, right? So over the course of 90 days, really understand there's going to be 3 things that drive it. One is, again, your clinical excellence. You wouldn't be here if you don't have that. I generally like to build, you could build them in either which order. I personally, because I think they take a longer lead time, I like to build B2B referrals before building C2C referrals because that's already happening organically. So we can, enhance it, with quite quick time frames versus something that's going to take a few months, which a B2B referral often does. So not saying you have to follow that order, but I always say start with B2B because that's a longer lead time and then build your client-to-client referrals after that because much of that can be done very, very quickly, right? So just some examples, again, of what a 1 to 3 month timeline could look like, what you're doing in your foundation phase, what you're doing in month 2 as you're being really proactive with your outreach, and then what you're doing in month 3 as you amplify that. Again, one size never fits all, but just some different elements you want to keep in mind. As for what you're going to be doing every week, right, definitely, like I say to clients, you got to have content creation time in the calendar every week. Well, you need to have referral generation time in the content calendar in the calendar every week, pardon me, right? And then again, like what COIs are you reaching out to that week, right? What are your patient touch points going to be that week? And how is your team being encouraged and educated to send more referrals, both B2B and C2C each and every week, right? You need these to be in your weekly rhythm or they won't happen, right? I see so many practices get jazzed about local marketing, they get jazzed up about referrals, and then it all falls off a cliff because they don't maintain it, right? So get that weekly referral time in the calendar for outreach, for educating your staff, and for patient touch points. Very, very important. So that at a glance was a little bit of how you market locally. I would love to hear in the comments like what your big 3 takeaways are, what you're most excited to implement. And if you are looking for any help taking this further and want to know what we do around here and how we help people build their referral ecosystems, head over to marketinginsightsmeeting.com. We work with $2 million plus practices to build something extraordinary. I'd love to learn about your practice and give you some ideas. So I hope you found this helpful, and I will see you guys soon in another video. Bye for now. I would love to hear what you thought of this video. What did you like? What else do you want to learn? Let me know in the comments below. We're always posting new content, so make sure you go ahead and like and subscribe to this channel as well. And of course, if you're looking to learn about how we can help you make your marketing that much more uncommon, that much more elevated, and you really want to understand what you can achieve for your practice, go to marketinginsightsmeeting.com. We would love to chat with you and learn all about your goals.